Stop. Before you scroll, understand what you're seeing right now in silver is not a normal price move. It's a systems event. Silver is vanishing in real time, not because of a mysterious conspiracy, but because the math of the modern financial world finally collided with something it cannot manufacture. Physical metal. Here's the first number you need to hold in your head like a warning siren. As of Q3 2025, global debt surged to about $345. 7 trillion, roughly 310% of global GDP, according to the Institute of International Finance. That number is not just high, it's a structural condition. It means the world runs on promises that must be rolled, refinanced, and maintained with constant confidence. Now, here's the second number. The IMF's global debt database and related analysis showed global debt sitting just above 235% of GDP around 2024-2025 levels, stabilized, yes, but still elevated and heavy. Translation. The system didn't heal, it just stopped bleeding for a moment while the underlying burden stayed massive. And here's the third number, the one that turns this from macro talk into immediate reality. The CME's official COMEX Silver Warehouse Stock Report, the actual depository statistics, shows registered silver, metal tagged as available for delivery, hovering around roughly the low hundreds of millions of ounces in mid-January 2026 reporting. If you don't know why registered matters, don't worry, I'll explain it clearly in a minute, because that single word is the trapdoor under the entire paper market. And if you stay to the end, you'll understand why the most dangerous phase of this story is not the price spike. It's what happens after the spike, when everyone suddenly wants the same thing at the same time. Let's make one thing brutally simple right up front. Debt can be issued, currency can be expanded, contracts can be rolled, paper claims can be multiplied. But silver? Silver is atoms. You can't print it. You can't stimulus it into existence. You can't central bank it into being. That's why silver is flashing the kind of warning signal that currencies used to flash before people lost their savings, before empires rewrote their rules, before markets entered regimes where yesterday's logic stopped working. So here's the core revelation. What looks like a silver rally is actually the visible edge of a much older machine, one that operates in 4 stages every time, across history, across empires, across modern economies. Stage 1 is the setup. A system builds trust. It creates a unit that people accept without thinking. Sometimes it's a coin. Sometimes it's a redeemability promise. Sometimes it's the belief that markets are deep and liquid and always deliver. Stage 2 is the expansion. The system discovers it can create more claims than it has real backing for. More debt, more credit, more promises. Because most people don't redeem at the same time, this phase is sold as progress, growth, innovation, prosperity. But mechanically, it's the same move. Expand claims faster than reality. Stage 3 is the crisis. Reality pushes back. Costs rise, confidence cracks. The system faces a choice. Admit the limits and force defaults, or protect the structure by diluting the unit and stretching the rules. Stage 4 is the inevitable outcome. Scarce tangible assets reprice against the weakened unit. People stop trusting the abstract and start demanding the real. The market doesn't normalize, it transitions. Now, I'm going to prove this pattern 3 times from history, quickly and cleanly, because the goal isn't trivia. The goal is recognition. Once you recognize the machine, you can't unsee it. First proof, Rome and the debasement trap. In the setup phase, Rome's money worked because it carried reliable value. People accepted it because they knew what it was, and they knew what it contained. Then expansion arrived, because empires are expensive. Wars, borders, bureaucracy, feeding cities. Rome's obligations grew faster than what taxes could comfortably fund. And that's where the temptation always shows up. You can either collect the pain directly through taxes, or you can spread it invisibly through currency manipulation. Rome chose the invisible path. Debasement. Same coin. Same authority. Less silver inside. Then crisis. Once debasement becomes noticeable, behavior changes. People hoard older, higher quality coins. Merchants raise prices. Trust erodes. The state tries controls, enforcement, decrees. And then the outcome. The unit stops being a stable measure and becomes a political instrument. And once money becomes political, society becomes unstable because contracts, wages, and savings become uncertain. The important part is not the Roman drama. The important part is the mechanism. Expand obligations, dilute the unit, watch real value move elsewhere. Second proof, Weimar Germany and the speed of collapse. Setup, a functioning economy with a recognized currency. Expansion, war costs, then post-war burdens and reparations, and a state trapped between impossible promises and political reality. So the system does what systems do when they can't admit limits. It creates more currency and credit to cover gaps that can't be covered by real output. Crisis, confidence breaks. People spend immediately. Prices run away. Time itself becomes the enemy because holding currency, even briefly, becomes a loss. Outcome: hard assets, foreign currency, and real goods become the true money. The paper unit becomes a hot potato. Savings are erased. Again, ignore the drama. Keep the skeleton. Claims expand beyond reality. Confidence snaps. Real assets reprice. Third proof: the post-gold era, the Nixon shock, and the 1970s monetary aftershock. Setup: Bretton Woods. A global architecture of trust, where the dollar had a formal link to gold and the world accepted the structure. Expansion: decades of growing obligations and increasing dollars in circulation relative to the gold base. Eventually, the mismatch became undeniable. Crisis: 1971. The gold window closes. The central promise is changed because reality made the old promise impossible. Outcome: the 1970s inflation era and a repricing of real assets as the unit's credibility weakened. Different century, same machine. Now take a breath, because we're about to apply this exact pattern to the present, step by step, like a forensic audit. And I'm going to do it in a way that you can't unknow once you hear it. Stage 1 today was the setup. The age of paper is as good as physical. The age of financial engineering. The age where you were trained to believe that if a screen says you own something, you own it. The age where liquidity became a religion. Check. Stage 2 today was expansion. Global obligations growing faster than underlying productive growth, requiring constant refinancing and constant confidence. That's not an opinion. It's visible in the debt number. Again, roughly 345. 7 trillion by end of Q3 2025 per IIF reporting, and a world still carrying debt above 235% of GDP by IMF measures. Verified. Now here's where silver enters like a blade. Silver is not just a precious metal, it's a strategic industrial input and a monetary asset that humans instinctively trust when paper trust wobbles. And that combination is rare. The Silver Institute reports that total silver demand in 2024 was about 116 billion ounces, and industrial demand remained strong, with electronics and electrical demand highlighted as a key driver. That matters because, unlike gold, which is mostly held, silver is used, consumed, embedded into the infrastructure of modern life. That means it doesn't just sit in vaults waiting to be mobilized when fear rises. A meaningful portion of it gets permanently scattered across products where recovery is difficult or uneconomic. Now stage 3, crisis and loss of control. This is where people get emotional and start shouting manipulation or bubble or it'll crash tomorrow. Ignore the noise and watch the plumbing. In metals, the plumbing is inventories, delivery categories, and the gap between paper claims and deliverable metal. On comics warehouses, you'll see 2 key categories discussed constantly: eligible and registered. Eligible metal meets exchange standards and sits in approved warehouses, but it is not tagged as available for delivery. Registered metal is the category identified as available for delivery against futures contracts. That distinction is everything, because when panic hits, the question is not how much exists somewhere. The question is, how much is actually available to satisfy delivery requests without changing the rules? And now look at the official CME warehouse report itself, the depository statistics published by CME. It's literally the daily sheet the market watches for. What's in the vault? Here's the uncomfortable truth. When registered inventories get thin, the system becomes dependent on confidence that holders of eligible metal will convert it, confidence that demand won't surge at the wrong time, confidence that most people will accept cash settlement or roll contracts instead of insisting on metal. That is what loss of control looks like in modern finance. It doesn't look like soldiers in the street. It looks like growing pressure at the delivery layer. Undeniable. Now, some people will respond, but London has huge vault holdings. There's plenty of silver. And yes, London is the biggest hub. The LBMA's London Vault data shows that as of end December 2025, London vaults held 27,818 tons of silver, valued around $64. 4 billion. But here is the key insight most people miss. Held in vaults is not the same as available float. Vault totals include metal owned by ETFs, institutions, industrial users, and long-term holders. In a confidence shock, holders don't become sellers. They become tighter holders. The moment people fear scarcity, the available float shrinks, even if the headline total looks large. So stage 3 is not hypothetical. It's present in the structure. High global debt, elevated macro fragility, industrial demand pressure, and a physical market where deliverability matters more than paper narratives. Check. Now, stage 4, the inevitable repricing. This is the part you must understand emotionally and logically, because stage 4 is where people lose money. Not because they picked the wrong chart, but because they didn't understand regime change. In a normal market, price moves, then supply responds, then demand cools, then the market mean reverts. In a scarcity market, price moves and demand doesn't cool, it becomes urgent, because the asset is not being bought for upside. It's being bought for certainty. And certainty demand doesn't behave like speculative demand. Once that happens, you see a chain reaction. Premiums detach from spot, delivery times become a hidden price, availability becomes a status symbol, and the public starts asking a question that is fatal to paper structures. Do I actually get the metal if I ask for it? That question alone can reprice an entire market. And here's a concrete sign of how intense this environment is. CME Group announced it will launch a 100-ounce silver futures contract on February 9th, 2026, citing record retail demand, pending regulatory review. Read that again. An exchange is responding to demand pressure by changing product structure. That's not nothing. That's the market evolving under stress. Now I want to do something that will hold your attention, because this is where most videos lose viewers. They drift into vague doom talk. We're not doing that. We're going to do a cold step-by-step confirmation so you can feel the gears clicking. Setup. Years of trust in paper systems. Check. Expansion. Record global debt scale and an elevated debt to GDP world. Verified. Crisis signal. Deliverability categories, tightness focus, daily inventory scrutiny, undeniable. Outcome pressure. An asset that is both monetary and industrial, with demand measured in billions of ounces annually. Check. Now, here's the part you need to hear if you're serious, because this is where the psychological trap closes on most people. The trap is thinking the story ends at silver went up. No, that's the easy part. The hard part is what happens after the public wakes up. In every historical case, the most dangerous moment is not when insiders notice the imbalance. It's when the wider crowd realizes the imbalance at the same time and rushes toward the same exit. And what is the exit in a financial system built on expanding claims? It's real assets, scarce assets, assets outside the promised stack. So if you want a simple mental model, it's this. Paper wealth is a claim. Physical scarcity is a fact. When claims multiply faster than facts, facts eventually assert themselves. Silver is one of the facts. Now, before you interpret this as me telling you what to buy, I'm not. This is education, not personal financial advice. Silver can be extremely volatile. It can spike, crash, and whipsaw. And depending on where you live, there can be taxes, premiums, storage issues, and liquidity constraints. You should do your own research, and if needed, talk to a qualified professional. But I'm telling you something more important than a trade. I'm telling you the pattern is real, and it doesn't care about optimism. So let's destroy the 3 comforting myths that keep people asleep. Myth 1, this time is different, because America is exceptional. Even if a system is dominant, arithmetic still applies. If obligations grow faster than productive reality, something must give. Dominance delays pain. It doesn't eliminate it. Myth 2, central banks can manage it. Central banks can change the timing of events. They can't delete constraints. They can expand liquidity. They can't print silver. Myth 3, technology will save us. Technology is real, but technology consumes inputs. The more electrified and digitized the world becomes, the more it relies on high-performance materials. When demand growth meets supply constraints, technology can intensify scarcity instead of relieving it. Now let's make this practical. If you want to survive any stage 4 environment, whether it's silver, housing, energy, food, or currency stress, you need 3 habits. First, stop consuming narratives and start tracking signals. Signals are inventories, deficits, delivery tightness, and policy shifts. Narratives are what people say after the signal already moved. Second, learn the difference between ownership and exposure. In a calm regime, those feel similar. In a stress regime, they diverge. That's why the registered versus eligible distinction matters so much in metals. Third, build optionality. Optionality means you're not forced to act in panic. It means you understand the machine early enough to choose calmly. And here's a question for you. Answer it honestly. If silver became difficult to source for 6 months, would that change how you view its value? Would that change how you view paper claims on it? Would that change how you view the stability of the system that says everything is always available? If the answer is yes, then you already understand the core of stage 4, because stage 4 is when markets stop pricing assets. They start pricing certainty. Now let me leave you with the final warning, the one that history repeats like a curse. People always say, this time is different, right before the pattern completes. Rome thought the empire would manage it. Weimar thought it could print through it. The post-gold era thought financial innovation would smooth it. And yet every time, the same thing happened. Promises expanded, trust cracked, and the real repriced. So if you take only one thing from this video, take this. Silver isn't just moving. Silver is revealing. It's revealing what happens when a system built on expanding claims meets a world built on physical constraints. And if you want to understand what happens next, how the machine was built, why the physical layer is overpowering the paper layer, and what the next stage looks like, then subscribe. because the next video is where we go deeper into the actual mechanics, how deliverability pressure spreads, how confidence events cascade, and what signals to watch before the crowd shows up. Don't get caught learning the system only after it changes, because in the phase we're entering, surprise is the most expensive asset you can hold.